When murderers are caught, they can often face some of the toughest justice the law has to offer. Many of these killers sit in silence as the horrors they have committed are spoken out in court, bringing shame on the accused before they face the inevitable jail time. But some killers are truly evil to the core, and no matter what they've done or who they have hurt, they never show remorse.
I'll tell you point blank, I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Teresa Ann's death. It could have all been prevented. All you had to do is let me see my kid. Now you're never going to see her again.
These are the chilling words of Randall Moore, who murdered his wife in a brutal killing that tore a family apart and left a child without their parents. Those words are aimed at the victim's mother in a shocking show of arrogance and denial. Even the experienced judge cannot believe the words he is hearing.
If anybody didn't know what a piece of work you were before you start talking, they know it now.
This all began a year earlier with a family in meltdown. The marriage of Randall and Teresa Ann Moore was rocky from the very beginning. They met on Valentine's Day, 2008, and were married quickly. Randall wasn't very liked in the family, and there was a very good reason why. Since she married him, Teresa Ann had become more distanced from her family. They later learned that Randall was a controlling husband, and he was making their marriage a nightmare. When their son Lexi was born, he should have been a beacon of hope for the future, but instead, he became the focal point in a tug-of-war that would eventually turn fatal. By October 2009, Teresa Ann could take no more of the toxic marriage and left Randall. But worse than that, she also got a restraining order against him, and he was also made to hand over any firearms he possessed as a safety measure. It turns out this was one of 4 restraining orders he had to his name, only Teresa Ann's would be his last. And for all the wrong reasons. Her world would come crashing down on Veterans Day 2009, when her nightmare began. That cold November day, only a month after she filed her restraining order against him, he decided he would take matters into his own hands. He had become paranoid, according to neighbors, and was going stir-crazy at not being able to see his son. Teresa Ann was living in fear of her life from the man she once loved, and those fears would soon be realized. Randall had been following his wife, and now he was ready to pounce. He kidnapped her in a terrifying ordeal that was about to get a whole lot worse. The horror that Teresa Ann's family must have experienced. Randall told them he had taken her by text message in a shocking display of contempt. She was taken to his apartment, and there, her psychopathic husband and father of her child would produce a shotgun.
He has 20 shells. He wants no one to come to the door.
In the showdown, Randall fired towards police.
303 Adam, I've been hit. Okay, 303 Adam's been hit. Officer down.
Luckily, the brave officer would live to tell the story.
My hand was mangled to the point where I could not grip my weapon. I tried, and I just, it wouldn't work. And it was like something you see in a movie. And it was just kind of surreal.
Teresa Ann would not make it out alive. She was found by officers with a shotgun wound to the face, holding a letter that Randall had sent her. Teresa Ann's mother, Sheila Lynch, was distraught at the message she had read, but Randall hadn't finished, and you won't believe what he did next. Shayla picked up the phone to find Randall on the other end, and he told her every sordid detail of what he had just done to her daughter. He'd also called Teresa Ann's brother the same way.
You want me to tell you something?
Well, you can tell me whatever you want.
I didn't want to do any of this.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, all I wanted was my son. I just wanted to see my 7-month-old baby. That's all I cared about.
You just wanted to see your son?
Yep.
Where's your son at now?
He's not with me.
Every step of the way, Randall had maintained he was not sorry for anything he had done. In fact, he even went as far to blame anybody but himself. Charged with kidnap and murder, Randall would bring out all the excuses and show a total disregard for any wrongdoing. In court, he became more vocal than ever, and the scenes that played out during the trial are like nothing you will ever see before. And what Randall says will leave you speechless.
That has got to be the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life.
As Shayla bravely confronts her daughter's killer in front of a packed courtroom, Randall can't help but get his say. And what he does say is just unforgivable.
Read the journal she wrote. She hated you. She hated you. You're a loser.
His words leave the courtroom stunned, and gasps can be heard in a trial that many describe as like nothing they have ever seen before.
I've been doing this 31 years. I've never, ever seen anybody like you. And I hope, really, I never ever see anybody like you again.
Sounds wild, Eric.
It is. In about 14 years of reporting, I've never seen anything like this play out in a courtroom. A year and a day after Randall Moore kidnapped, raped, and shot his wife in the mouth, everyone involved let it fly.
Randall Moore spent as much time as he could belittling Shayla Lynch in a show of callous disregards that really helps us to understand the sick mind inside this unhinged, deadly individual. He speaks about the wife he murdered like she was a kind of nuisance in his life.
I thought the reason my wife was bitchy and nagging all the time was because she was just that way. That has got to be the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. I'm not saying what I did was any better, but...
And he even bragged about the several restraining orders against him and the women who obtained them.
I had several no contact orders on me. And you know what the funny thing is? The day after a no contact order was put on me, that girl was laying in my bed with me. So she wasn't too worried about anything. It was just something to get a piece of paper to keep me away, but then they always came back.
It's difficult to comprehend just how anybody can display this kind of behavior, especially towards the victim's mother. Maybe he realized he had nothing to lose. Maybe he really is as psychopathic as he makes out. He lays the blame for her murder on anyone but himself, time and time again. Officers on the scene would give their account on the horrific events they saw.
Did he tell you why he killed her?
He said that he was upset because she wouldn't allow him to see his kids.
Did he mention anything at all about this being an accident?
No.
But Randall Moore could seal his own fate as he turned his attention to Shayla Lynch for one final, sickening outburst.
I'll tell you point blank, I have not 1 ounce of remorse for Teresa Ann's death. It could have all been prevented. All you had to do is let me see my kid. Now you're never going to see her again.
Such a display of sheer negligence of any responsibility or even feelings towards what he had done would only result in a sentence deserving of such actions. The stunned judge had harsh words as he delivered his verdict.
And it's been said before, and it can't be said enough. You're cowards. You truly are cowards. You prey on women. They give you their love. They give you their trust, and you betray that. You betray it by physically and or mentally abusing these women. And they stay with you. And you guys just can't understand why they leave such wonderful men like you.
Randall Moore would receive 3 life sentences for killing his wife and 25 years for shooting an officer of the law, which, in the judge's own words, was not enough for the heartless barbarian.
The court doesn't allow me to punish you any more than I'm doing now. If I could, I would.
It sounds like this judge would have given the death penalty given the choice. At least this cold, deviant monster will never see the outside world again. But if you thought Randall Moore's behavior in court was that of a madman, then you won't believe what the next killer said on his day in court. Ronnie O'Neill III.
Listen, stop. Listen to me. You're not going to raise your voice again.
I'm not going to raise my voice again. I'm not.
I will have you removed from this courtroom. I can sentence you without you being present.
The judge is talking to Ronnie O'Neill, who is on trial for murder. His case has been a circus from start to finish, as this maniac represented himself. He shocked the courtroom and the world with his lack of remorse and his lack of contempt for just about everything.
I am not sorry for something I didn't do, and I am not sorry for the things I did do.
He protested his innocence right until the end, claiming to have been set up and stunned the jury with his erratic, aggressive statements.
Me guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. They would have called Mr. Khalil Brown. But I called Mr. Khalil Brown to be a witness for me.
This trial is like nothing you've seen before, and even the judge called this the worst case she'd ever seen.
I way imaginable. You name it, I've seen it. This is the worst case I have ever seen as far as the facts go.
Let's take a closer look at the Riverview murders. Although Ronnie O'Neill III was not married to Kenyatta Barron, they had 2 children together. Their daughter, Ron Nivea, was born in 2009 and was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and autism, and looking after her would no doubt come with its challenges. There was a biological dispute about their son, Ronnie O'Neill IV, but in the end, Ronnie III was proven to be his father. Eventually, the relationship deteriorated, and on March 18, 2018, things would spiral out of control. Police received a disturbing 911 call from an unknown woman, and she sounds in grave danger.
911, what's the address of your emergency? What's going on? I think I got gunshots fired at 4365 Rose Garden. I think I just heard 3 shots.
The dispatcher reported a male voice shouting, "Allah Akbar," in the background. The male caller then asked for 911 before the call ends. 8 minutes later, that same male calls back, talking of demons and attempts on his life. He gave his address, and the race was on. As police arrived, they found Kenyatta Barron lying motionless and Ron Nivea dead from a brutal, senseless attack with a hatchet. But by a miracle, there was a survivor. Before he left, Ronnie III set the house on fire, and his son was still alive inside. Detectives found him with a critical stab wound and burns, but he was alive, and this brave little boy would become a crucial piece towards justice being delivered.
I believe he said, "My dad killed my mom," or "My dad shot my mom." It's one of the 2 statements that he made.
Ronnie O'Neill III was arrested, and the trial date was set. And this trial would send the media into a frenzy.
Ronnie O'Neill is expected to begin his defense tomorrow and call his own witnesses, and just like the rest of this trial, we have no idea what to expect.
June 16th, 2021. A packed courtroom will soon experience Ronnie acting as his own attorney in a bizarre and twisted legal battle. This meant that at some point, a father would cross-examine the very child he tried to murder. And not only that, he'd claim his own boy is lying about the whole thing. Ronnie did attempt to use the stand your ground law, claiming he was defending his son from his murderous mother. The judge refused the request.
His wife started trying to run away, and he went and he grabbed her, and she was on the sidewalk, and he stood over her, did this striking thing 3 times, and he shot her.
The defendant's argument that he had been set up was slowly picked apart by witness after witness.
I found that I was slipping, which I couldn't figure out why, because I hadn't applied a lot of water. So I ducked down to the ground to try to see exactly what I was slipping on, and I realized that the floor was covered in blood.
Despite the mounting case against him, he protested his innocence right until his final, bizarre closing argument.
You've been hearing me for 2 weeks now, telling you that they committed criminal acts against me with the 911 calls and that fraudulent video that they just showed y'all. Now, I'm gonna prove it to you.
But even in that defense, O'Neill still could not escape the fact that he had brutally ended the lives of 2 innocent people.
I did kill Kenyatta Barron. But I want you to tell it like it is if you're gonna tell it.
In the end, it was his own son that delivered the final blow, in scenes that have rarely been seen in a courtroom as this case pitched father against son.
We're starting first here at 6 with this boy's act of bravery after surviving the unthinkable.
I just saw my dad holding a shotgun and my mom and mom screaming at him. My mom ran in my sister's room. My mom ran in my sister's room and terrified into the closet. And then my dad said, "Come here and come kill the beaver."
Was there a time when your mother was able to get out of the closet?
She was stumbling outside, and then I just saw my dad chase her.
Did he do something to your sister?
Yes, he hit her with an axe.
Perhaps the most incriminating testimony came as his father questioned him in the most unbelievable scenes.
How you doing, Ronnie?
Good.
It's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too.
Did you see me shoot
your mom?
No.
Did I hurt you that night of this incident?
Yes.
I did. And how did I hurt you?
You stabbed me.
The courtroom had heard all they needed. They had watched this heartless killer parade around the court, claiming to be set up by police in an argument that attempted to clear his name.
All right, very good. Thank you, members of the jury. So now that you have found the defendant guilty of first-degree murder, that means we will be going into a penalty phase.
O'Neill was sentenced to 3 life sentences plus 60 years as one of the most bizarre and disturbing trials ever came to a close with the judge's final words.
At that moment, that child knew. She knew she was being betrayed in the cruelest, most tragic and sorrowful way that a child could ever be betrayed. She was being betrayed by her parent, the one person that should be there to protect their children and love them and keep them from harm. And that was the last thing that child felt before she passed on from this earth, was your utter, cruel betrayal to her.
But if you thought this killer had the nerve to blame anybody but himself, then you won't believe what the next defendant says to try to avoid jail time. Teddy Baltimore Smith.
He pulled up on me and he spit on me. You know what I'm saying? After I asked him please not to do that. I don't know how come he did that.
These are the words of killer Teddy Baltimore Smith, who is on trial for murder after killing a man during a road rage incident. The morning of the murder, the car of Smith and the car of Cerna pulled up at lights. The victim, 56-year-old Gilbert Cerna, spat on the black BMW of Smith, enraging him. During the scuffle, Smith is reported to have attacked Cerna with a flip-flop, as testified by driver of the car, Jeffrey Hunter. It is alleged that racial slurs were exchanged. Finally, Smith produced a knife and stabbed Cerna to death.
One of the guys just called me, G's been killed, somebody stabbed him in the chest. And I got in there and started screaming, and I said, no, not my brother.
Cerna's sister had spoken to him only moments before his death. A neighbor broke the devastating news. Hunter then gave chase, but failed to catch up with the speeding BMW. But it wouldn't take long for the law to catch up with the perpetrator. He was arrested, charged with second-degree murder, and his bizarre defense would begin.
Because of you, my family and I will never share precious moments together. Nothing you receive will ever bring him back to us. Because of you, there will always be a big part of my heart missing.
The driver of the car that day, Jeffrey Hunter, made a panicked 911 call in which he said, "I know he is dead. He got stabbed through his heart." Smith's defense team would claim Cerna was the aggressor and tried to clear him of any wrongdoing, but the evidence was mounting against him.
When he stuck him with the knife, he had his hand up on the truck holding it, resting with his right hand. You know how you lean up on something and you're doing it like that.
But Smith would protest his innocence in a frustrating trial that drew the attention of a hungry media.
Today, more on this suspected road rage killer that's been captivating everyone's attention this week. This person will face a judge later on today, behind bars right now, 44-year-old Teddy Baltimore Smith.
Smith had already had a history with the law, and despite his team's best efforts, this trial was looking at heading in only one direction.
Facing decades in prison, Teddy Baltimore Smith passed on apologizing to the family of the man he killed for spitting. Instead, he chose to blame the victim for provoking him.
He pulled up on me and he spit on me. You know what I'm saying? After I asked him please not to do that. I don't know how come he did that.
During the course of the trial, Smith had shown no sign of remorse for ending the life of his victim. Even worse, he continued to blame Cerna for the confrontation, or the argument getting out of control, and even for making him stab him. Smith's whole argument was based around the threat-bear argument that had Cerna not have spat on his car in the first place, this would have never happened. A shocked judge and courtroom listened as this cold-blooded killer tried to evade justice. But with strong witness testimony, undeniable evidence against him, and a sheer disregard for any wrongdoing, would leave this judge with only one verdict. And that was guilty as charged. Perhaps Smith had argued his point so much that it might help towards a lighter sentence, but this judge had other ideas after witnessing this sick and twisted killer try to fool the justice system. She gave Smith 28 years of incarceration. Even in sentencing, Smith could not help himself one last time.
No, you're giving me 28 years. At least you want to.
Again, he was sentenced to 28 years in prison. He has 30 days, Kelly, to appeal that sentence. Back to you.
Killers come in all shapes and sizes. Some are ashamed of what they have done, sheepishly sitting through trial until the verdict to accept their fate as handed down by a judge.